Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. I can't believe I'm actually sitting here writing this story after going through it so painfully. I know that there will be those among you who will not like to read this, and there will be those who will like it. So be it. My name is John David Martin, and I'm a policeman. No, that's not quite right. I'm more than a cop. I'm an investigator for the Tyler County Crime Task Force in Texas. My position is special agent. I am good at my job and rarely fail to do the tasks assigned to me. I know it sounds selfish, and in a way it is, but I'm also just stating the facts. I was doing something. It was a hot case. The rape of two young girls and the kidnapping of one of them. This has become news, and it will be in people's memories and minds for many years to come. Everyone who knows me calls me JD, including my beautiful wife Allison, Ellie. We have been married for 5 years, and we have no children. I think our marriage is pretty normal, and in most cases I would call it special. Ellie is actually very pretty and sweet. We grew up together and have always been good friends, and it just turned into love, and eventually into an engagement and then into marriage. She was always the best thing that happened to me, and a lot of good things happened to me. Bill Jacobs, my boss, was the director of our task force, and many years ago he took a liking to me and my work. Because of this, I had all the opportunities to advance, and I didn't miss any of them. I'm 32 years old, and I'm the second oldest in the task force. I know it had a lot to do with Bill's support, but I also earned it by doing a great job. A year ago, Bill called me into his office and told me that there had been a double rape and that one of the girls was in the hospital and the other had been abducted. The girls were sisters, Mary and Janice Schindler. Mary was 16 and Janice was 17. According to Mary, their uncle Josh Schindler picked them up from school and took them to his lair. She said he and his friend Garvey Smithson repeatedly raped them. Mary was in a pretty bad emotional and physical condition, and the two men decided to take her to the hospital and leave with Janice. Both men have always been a bit unstable, but they've never done anything like this before. Bill knew he didn't have to ask me to take on this case, but he did. He told me that he thought if anyone could find Janice and arrest Josh and Garvey, it would be me. I, like everyone else, was sick of the facts, and I agreed to take on this case. I took Gina Darling, one of our employees who works with me most of the time, and went to the hospital to meet Mary. Gina does a fantastic job, and I trust her with my life. I knew she would be invaluable in talking to Mary. Mary's condition had stabilized, and she was ready to testify with all the details she could remember. Mostly Gina, carefully guided her through the whole ordeal, gathering as much information as possible without upsetting the young girl more than she already was. She was incredibly brave and was able to tell us everything. When we were done, I told Mary that we would do everything we could to find Janice and bring her uncle and his friend to justice. I never promise, because you never know for sure what you can do, but I wanted to make a promise to this girl. I think she knew that I would give it my all. Gina and I have been working tirelessly on this case. We worked 18 hours a day for 3 days in a row. In short, I was obsessed with this case, as was Gina. I'm sure this is where the cracks in my relationship with Ellie started. She complained to me that I was working too hard. She complained that I was spending too much time with Gina. I looked at her while she was carrying me around, and I couldn't believe it was my sweet wife. I told her that there was a scared and insulted 17-year-old girl who was counting on me to find her before they killed her, and I'd be damned if I'd relax until I found her. I guess I pretty much told Ellie to come to terms with it and stop being so selfish. Well, on the 4th day, we had a break. Someone spotted Garvey in Creighton, a small town on the border of our county. He went into the grocery store to buy some supplies and was seen by someone who recognized him. There were several photos of Josh and Garvey in the newspapers, but not everyone had seen them yet. We're lucky this guy saw the news. A few SUVs with officers pulled into Creighton, but when we got there, Garvey was nowhere to be seen. Presumably, he had just left the city and headed south. I knew this part of the county pretty well and developed a plan for how we could systematically check all possible shelters in the area. We started by setting up a perimeter 10 miles from Creighton. Then we started to spread out to cover the area. And again, we were lucky. Just 3 hours after Garvey was spotted, we found a shack in the desert, and of course Janice was there. She was mistreated and beaten, but she was alive. We were able to call a medical helicopter, and she was taken to a hospital in Tyler. Unfortunately, Josh and Garvey somehow slipped past us and were nowhere to be seen. I knew they would be hard to find, but I was determined that they would not get away with it, and I promised myself that I would find them and see how they would be punished for what they did to these two girls. We returned to Tyler, and Gina and I went to the hospital to check on both girls. Gina and I just sat and talked about this case, and I made it clear to her that I would find those two bastards, even if it was the last thing I would ever do. I could tell that Gina was also very excited about all this, so I gave her a little hug and smiled to calm her down. I told her that we would catch these people and bring them to justice. When we had the opportunity to go inside and talk to Janice, she told us that her Uncle Josh and Garvey had decided to leave her there and were going to go to hard-to-reach places, as they put it. She thought she heard them talking about South Texas, but she wasn't sure. Apart from the details of the rape and abduction, she couldn't have been more helpful in finding the two men. We were overjoyed that both girls were safe and that they would recover soon. I know they will need extensive counseling and ongoing support from their friends and family, but I was sure they would be fine. On the last day of that week, I promised them that I would find their uncle and his friend and bring them here. I know, I shouldn't have promised them, but I was sure I would succeed. I think that's where the story really begins. I was still obsessed with finding these two men. I'm not apologizing for that, but it's true. I spent most of my time working on this case. I followed the footsteps that others thought were cold. I wanted justice, and I didn't want to break my promise to Mary and Janice. Needless to say, the situation has worsened at home. Ellie kept telling me that it was stupid of me to work so hard on this case. Both girls were found, and both got better. I kept telling her that holding Josh and Garvey accountable would help in the final healing of these two teenagers, and she kept telling me that I should leave things as they are. I've been working on this case for 5 weeks, and our relationship has been getting more strained every day. Then we caught our latest breakthrough in this case. It was Tuesday morning when I was informed that the bastards had been arrested in Lake Charles, Los Angeles, on charges of disorderly conduct under the influence the night before, and the arresting officer was the cousin of the chief of police in Beaumont, Texas. I've been in touch with the Beaumont police chief, Manny Grayson, many times over the past 5 weeks because I've been following all the leads in the South. He let me know that they are in custody in Lake Charles and will be detained for the maximum number of days to give us time to consider extradition. In 2 days, all the documents for the extradition of the two men from Louisiana to Texas were processed, and I arranged to pick them up on Friday. I was going to go to Beaumont, and Manny, Gina, and I were going to go to Lake Charles and bring the prisoners back to Texas. I estimated that the trip would take me about 5 hours each way, so I planned to leave around 4 a.m. so that we could pick up Josh and Garvey by 10 a.m. and return to Tyler before 5 p.m. When I got up in the morning and was ready to leave, I leaned over Ellie and kissed her on the forehead. I said, "Goodbye, dear. When I get home tonight, all this will be over, and I will make it up to you for all the time I spent on this case." Her response was less enthusiastic than I expected when she said, "Well, don't rush back because of me, JD. I'm sure I'll find something to do until you get back. I've been on my own for the last 6 weeks, so it's not going to be anything new." It was just as bitchy as she had been with me all this time. Now I knew I hadn't paid enough attention to her, but I thought she knew how much I loved her and that it was only a temporary thing. I thought she would be overjoyed, but all I heard was sarcasm. I knew that I would have to do a lot to make it up to her, and I was more than willing to do it. I missed her too, but this case was very important for those girls, for our city and for me. I would make it up to her. When I left the house, I was in full gear. I had everything I needed to bring these assholes back to justice with the death penalty. I arranged for Gina to come with me, as I knew that this case was also special to her, so I stopped at the police station and picked her up, as we had agreed in advance. We drove in silence for about 2 hours, both reflecting on our own thoughts about the events of the past day. I looked at her a couple of times and she was deep in her thoughts, so I didn't say anything. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the ringing of our phone. Gina took it and listened for a minute, then handed it to me, saying, "This is the chief." "This is JD, I said. "What's wrong, chief?" "JD, slow down so we can talk," he replied. "I found a place to pull off the road, and Bill told me that Louisiana had lifted the extradition order." Apparently, an enterprising assistant district attorney had the idea to compare Josh and Garvey's DNA and received information about an unsolved rape and murder 8 months earlier. Since they had a murder along with a rape, it was decided that Louisiana would file a criminal case first, and therefore we would not be able to take them with us to Texas. Although Gina and I were not happy that we had not achieved justice in our own jurisdiction, we both understood that their case had the greatest potential for the death penalty. In Texas, because there was no murder, we probably could only put them in prison for life. We reluctantly agreed to leave the current charge to Louisiana. We didn't really have a choice. They had these bastards, but we didn't. However, I spoke on the phone with Manny to make sure that he would inform the Louisiana judicial system that these two should be held without bail, as they were clearly ready to escape and were facing additional criminal charges in Texas. He assured me that he would contact his cousin and that they would not be released. When all the talking was over, we turned around and headed back to Tyler. Bill told us to take a short vacation, because now that Josh and Garvey were detained, there were no urgent investigations. On the way back, we stopped for breakfast, and I dropped Gina off at her house around 11 a.m. and headed home. When I returned home and opened the garage door, someone else's car was parked in my place. I know there's always an unfamiliar car parked outside the poor guy's house. But it was true. It was a bright red Mustang, and I thought I knew whose it was. It was someone named Billy Marconi, a tough local asshole. Of course, I had a very bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, and even before I entered the house, I felt rage building up in me. I knew what I was going to find, and I knew I wasn't going to like it. I quietly entered through the garage into the utility room, and from there went through the kitchen, hallway, and up the stairs to the bedroom. There were no clues around, as you might expect, no shoes, no piles of clothes. But when I went up the stairs, I heard them in the master bedroom. Oh my God, yes, Billy. You know how to make me feel like a total cheater, and I love it. JD loves me, and he would never make me feel like a cheater, but I like it when you use me. Just use me, she said brokenly. As I walked down the hall to the bedroom, I could feel the blood pounding in my head, and I knew I was pretty much out of my mind. I reached for my gun and was about to pull it out of the holster when my hand touched the taser that every officer carries when transporting prisoners. It was probably a good thing that my hand touched it, because there's no telling what I would have done with the gun. I quietly entered the room with a taser in my hand, was able to stand right behind him and hit him right in the ass and balls. He fell like a stone on Ellie's back, and when she threw him off, I hit her too. When they both passed out, I took out one set of handcuffs and handcuffed Ellie to our bed. There was no way she could have run away from me or prevented me from doing what I was going to do to Billy. Then I handcuffed Billy and dragged him by his feet out of the bedroom and down the hall to the basement door. I think he hit his head a couple of times while rolling down the stairs, but I really didn't care. I handcuffed him, wrapped my arms around one of the support beams, blindfolded him, and gagged him. By this time, he was starting to come to his senses again, and I let him. You lost your mind when you decided to make love to a policeman's wife. I'll be back to take care of you a little later, Billy. Don't go anywhere. I told him with a malicious laugh before I tasered him again. I went back to the bedroom and sat on the chair next to the bed. Ellie was crying softly and my heart ached. But at that moment, my anger over what I had discovered was stronger than my compassion. I took out the taser and put it on the bed in full view of her. Allison, I said, I have a few questions for you, and you better answer them honestly. If you don't answer honestly, I will use a taser against you over and over again until I find out the truth. I'll know it's true if you and Billy give me the same answers. So, here are the questions I asked her. How long have you and Billy been making love? How many times have you been together? Where did you meet to make love? Does anyone else know that you had sex with Billy? Do you like making love to him more than to me? These were her answers. Today is the only time I've ever made love to Billy. Just this once. Just here, this one time. No one else knows. Only I've already heard her say. Every time it seems to get better than the last time and, oh my God, yes, Billy, you know how to make me feel like a total cheater, and I like it. JD loves me, and he would never make me feel like a cheater, but I like it when you use me. Just take me. So I knew she was lying to me, and I told her so. Allison, these answers are not true. I warned you what lying to me would lead to. I picked up the taser and gave it a full charge again. When she came to, I told her, I'm going to talk to Billy, so while I'm gone, you better think about the right answers. I'll be back. I took a taser with me and headed to the basement. I knew almost exactly what was going to happen when I asked Billy the same questions. I knew he was lying, and I knew I was going to hit him a couple of times. Believe me, I hoped that this would be the case. I growled at him. You piece of shit. I'll give you 10 seconds to tell me the truth. Next time I ask questions, or I'll fry your brains with this thing and feed your dead and smoking body to fucking coyotes in the desert. I hit him to the fullest and several times. His whole body went limp, but twitched a little. Then he came to his senses and I asked, 10 seconds, Billy, remember that? When did it start? I started counting. 10, 9, 8, 7. When I got to 5, he blurted out, about 6 weeks ago. How many times have you and Ellie made love? At least once a week every one of those 6 weeks, and sometimes it was twice a week, so maybe 8 or 9 times. Where did you do it? Always here, in your bed. When you were going to leave for a while. She called and I came. Does anyone else know that you used my wife? No, I kept it with me. Some of my guys know that I'm dating a woman, but no one knows who or where I'm going to meet her. Billy, is there anything else you'd like to add? Is it true this time? No, man, that's the whole truth. You know, I'm sorry I did that, but you know she was hitting on me and all that, and you know how it is, man, guys just aren't strong enough to say no. Big mistake. That dumb bastard should have kept his mouth shut. I told him, I'll be back later to finish with you, Billy. Don't go anywhere. And I gave him another prolonged stun gun, just because he made me angry. I went back upstairs to Ellie and said, well, Billy seems to have told the truth. He didn't seem to like the taser very much, so he came clean. Are you ready to be honest with me now? Answer the questions, Allison. She couldn't look at me, but she started. The first time was about 6 weeks ago. We were together once or twice a week for every week, so it's maybe 8 or 9 times. He always came here and always in this bed. No one else knows JD. And I really enjoyed making love because it was so dirty, but I love you and the way you make love to me. JD, I'm so sorry. Allison, I know you're sorry right now, but what I do not know is if you regret doing this, or that you were caught, and I will never be able to know for sure, and I cannot live like this. I'm going to go and take care of Billy, and then I'll come back to let you go. I picked up all of Billy's clothes from the bedroom floor, where he had thrown them in his haste to put my wife to bed. Damn it. It made me angry again when I left the room with her. His cell phone fell to the floor. I noticed it was a BlackBerry, and I had an idea. I threw Billy's clothes on our kitchen table and went out to the garage. With Billy's car keys in my hand, I got into his car and backed out into the driveway, closing the garage door behind me. I drove north out of town until I got to Interstate 20 and headed east to Longview, about half an hour away. I stopped at a Walmart on the south side of Longview and bought 2 disposable phones. Then I went to 2 other Walmart stores in Longview and bought 2 more phones each, so I had a total of 6. From there, I went to the radio store to meet my old friend. I sat down and explained my idea to him, and after cautiously warning him what I was going to do, he helped me get the rest of the equipment I would need. When I got home, I copied all of Billy's contacts, all of his text messages, and all of his voice messages to one of my new phones. Then, using the available hardware and applications, I cloned his phone. Yes, I know it's illegal, but at the time I didn't care. I wanted to keep an eye on this bastard and I was going to do it. That done, I went down to the basement and had a heart-to-heart talk with Billy. I told him, Billy, you're just a jerk, and one of these days I'm going to find a reason to humiliate you. I know you're angry, and I know you wish you'd never seen me, but unfortunately you did. That's what I expect. You will never say a word about this to a single living soul. You don't know Allison, and nothing has ever happened to you here in this house. You will never see or talk to Allison again. I will be watching, and any contact with her will lead to your immediate demise. Do you understand me, you piece of shit? He nodded his head in the affirmative, but I was not satisfied. I said, do you really understand me, you piece of shit? This time he said weakly, yes, I understand you. I freed him from the handcuffs and told him, then get dressed and get out of my house and never, I mean never, show your face here again. After he left, I reluctantly went up to my bedroom and let Allison go. The bed was a mess, but I really didn't care. I told her, I'm sorry you had to ruin everything here, but there's nothing you can do. I'll let you clean up after yourself. Then I threw a few things into my gym bag and told her, I'm going to go away for a while to think things over. I'll be back to tell you what's going to happen. She tried to grab my arm to stop me and begged, Please, JD, don't leave me, please stay. I'm so sorry. I said, Yes, I'm sorry too, but I have to go now, but I'll be back. I checked into the Staybridge Suites Hotel near the city center and spent most of Friday and Saturday evenings thinking about what I would like to do in the future. On Sunday morning, when I turned on my cell phone again, there were about 20 messages, most from Ellie. I really didn't want to listen to any of them, so I just flipped through the ones Ellie had written and listened to the rest. There was one from my boss, a couple from Ellie's sister, and one from Ellie's father. I immediately called my boss to let him know that I was fine and asked for a few days off. He didn't mind me taking a few days, but he told me to stay in touch. I realized that I hadn't eaten since Friday night and realized that this wasn't such a good idea. I went down to the hotel restaurant and ate a decent breakfast. I spent the rest of the day fishing in Tyler State Park. I caught some good perch on a jig and a worm, but did not leave any of them. It's better to let them grow and let someone else enjoy catching them. By lunchtime, I was tired and hot, so I went back to Staybridge, took a shower, and then went out to dinner. Having decided in my mind what I wanted to do, I went to bed and slept really well. It was Monday, and I spent the whole morning and most of the day trying to sort out some business before returning home. It was about 7 p.m. when I entered the house for the first time since I left on Friday night. Ellie was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I stopped to get a couple of sandwiches and some chips, so I put them on the table in front of us. She looked at them and then at me and said, I'm really not hungry, JD. I know you've probably lost your appetite, I said, but you really should try to eat a little. After you've eaten, we'll talk. She reluctantly took a sandwich and took a bite. I think the first bite whetted her appetite, so she ate greedily until she ate the whole sandwich and all the chips. When she finished, she looked at me and smiled, but then burst into tears. Oh, JD, I'm so sorry, she said, and she began to sob uncontrollably. When she finally calmed down, she went through the entire scam checklist. 1. It didn't mean anything to me, it was just making love. 2. I love you and I never intended to hurt you. 3. I was going to end it. 4. Part of the blame lies with you, because you were so obsessed, and I was lonely, and so on and so on. When she finished, I asked, Have you finished yet? I know who, when, and why, so nothing else matters to me. None of your statements mean shit to me. It was making love, but with someone other than me, so you shouldn't have done it. If you love me and didn't want to hurt me, you shouldn't have done that. And yes, of course, you were going to end it, maybe someday. And finally, if you were lonely, why didn't you spend time with your father or sister? No, you had to find that bastard so you wouldn't feel lonely. And it was my fault? My efforts and obsession, as you put it, were to apprehend kidnappers and rapists, and as it turned out, they were also murderers. I would say that my efforts were not an obsession, but a dedication to duty and public safety. I continued, Allison, I have no idea who you are anymore. The woman I married would never have done what you did. She would never have allowed herself to be treated the way Billy treated you. And she would never have thought so badly of me that she would have betrayed me like you did. I have no idea where the woman I married is now, but I'm sure she's gone forever. I'm sure I'll never be able to get her back. It's too late for that. I'm also afraid that the man you married doesn't exist anymore either. I used to believe that if you do the right things in life, everything will be fine. I've lived my whole life on this principle, and look where it's gotten me. I don't believe anymore. I don't think it matters what we do now. So the man you married is gone too. Ellie didn't stop crying while I was telling her all this. I know it was hard for her to hear, but at the same time it was true. It all came to me over the weekend when I was struggling to figure out who I was going to be now. Oh, I knew, but I wasn't going to tell anyone about it. So, Allison, I said, I'm leaving. I put the folder with the papers on the table. These are the divorce papers. Let me tell you what's in them. First of all, you have something that I want back. My great-grandmother's wedding ring that I gave you. I want it back. It's part of my family history, and I want to keep it in my family. I'm sorry to ask for this, because I really thought that one day we would be able to give it to our daughter or son. But that won't happen to you anymore, so I want it back. Oh my God. Her sobs doubled in intensity, but I continued. Please give me the ring now. She looked at me pleadingly, but I just shook my head, and she reluctantly took it off her finger and handed it to me. Secondly, Allison, I continued, you know that I receive money from my family foundation. Some of it is in our accounts along with our investments and savings, and I don't want you to have any of it. I will continue to receive money from my trust, so I will have everything I need. More sobbing. Damn. I intend to keep 100% of my pension, I added. Since your IRA account has almost the same amount, I see no reason to share my pension in any way. Finally, I said, home. As you know, the house doesn't belong to us. It is also part of my family's growth, and it will continue to be so. This trust was established long before you and I were married, and it will be considered premarital property. You have no legal rights to the house or to any family trust. But that's why I'm giving you most of our money and investments. They are approximately equal in value to the house. Besides, of course you have to leave this house within a week from today. I'll give you a week to find another place to stay and take out all your stuff. Again, there are household items that were part of the family trust, and I expect you to leave them when you leave. You can guess what will happen if you don't. Of course, her sobbing started again. So, Allison, I sighed, that's it. This is my suggestion. This is in no way negotiable. Have your lawyer look at the papers. Whether you sign them or not, I really don't care. Anyway, I'm leaving. Anyway, I won't be your husband anymore. Our marriage is over, either with a legal seal or practically, but it's over. If you sign the papers, give them to my lawyer, and he will complete the process. Of course, by this time she was inconsolable. There's one more thing we need to do before I leave, I said. We're going for a ride. We went out to my patrol car, and I told Allison to get in the back seat. She didn't know it, but I wanted her to be there so she couldn't get out. By this time, it was about 9 p.m., and the nightlife of the city, as always, began to boil. We drove into a more criminal part of the city, and I pulled over to the curb near one of the hottest places to rent. There were several women standing around, and I went over and talked to them for a minute. Allison was still sitting in the back seat of the car, not understanding what was going on. I took one of the women by the hand and led her to the car. Get in the back seat, Brenda, I said. She climbed in and sat down next to Allison. As I drove away, I saw the two women in the back seat appraising each other. After we left this part of the city, I pulled into the parking lot at the mall and started talking. Allison, I said, this is Brenda. I'm going to ask her some questions, and I want you to just listen to what she has to say. Brenda, what's your real name? Damn it, JD. You know who I am. I know, but I just want you to answer all my questions, Brenda. Okay, I'm really Judy Parker. Are you married? She took a deep breath and said, not anymore. Were you married? Yes, for Ron Parker. And who is Ron Parker? He's an assistant district attorney in the city. And why aren't you married to Ron Parker anymore? He divorced me because I cheated on him. And Brenda, who are you now? Damn you, JD. You know who I am. Are you happy now? No. Judy, I'm not happy, and I know you're not happy either. But why don't you tell Allison now how you became a cheater? Don't lose sight of anything. By this time, Allison's eyes were bulging out of their sockets and her mouth was open. Well, Brenda, Judy began. It all started when I met Billy Marconi at a social event. He was handsome and so charming, and he really liked being around me. My husband was so engrossed in chatting with the big shots at the party that he seemed to just ignore me, and Billy stepped in to make me feel good. We had a few drinks together, and before I knew it, we were already on the patio. He whispered things in my ear that I had never heard from a man before, how he would make me feel if he could be alone with me. I was vulnerable, and he took full advantage of it, but of course I didn't know that at the time. Before we returned inside, we agreed to have lunch the next day at the Carlton Hotel restaurant. Of course you know what happened. We ended up in one of the rooms, and Billy used me. I liked it. He was so attentive and so wonderful. That started a long journey to where I am now. He started coming to our house when Ron was away on business. One day Ron caught us and threw me out. Billy took me in, and the long road to my demise suddenly became shorter. Before I realized what had happened to me, I was hooked on illegal substances, and Billy was selling me to everyone. Then he found someone new to work with and just sent me to his stable of girls. So that's where I am today. I saw Allison just shaking in the back seat. She was in shock. I asked Brenda, "How many girls does Billy have in the stable, Brenda?" She replied, "I know about 4 other girls who are doing tricks for him right now. From time to time, one of them goes to the hospital or to the cemetery and a new one appears." "One last question, Brenda," I said. "What would you do with Billy Marconi if he were in the back seat with you right now?" Allison cringed and gave her a rather vicious look. Damn bad, Allison, I thought. But I doubted that I would ever accept Brenda's offer. I gave Brenda a couple $100 and asked if I could take her home instead of going back to her place of work. She thought it might be a good idea, so we went to her house. After we dropped Brenda off, I drove Ellie back to the house. We sat in the patrol car for a few minutes before I let her out and gave my closing speech. "Allison, I still refuse to call her Ellie ever again. So now you see what a slippery slope you started on. You can see how you came so close to flushing your life down the drain. You can see what your actions were leading to. I did this last good deed for you because I loved the woman I married and because I don't want her to become another brand. We're done, but you don't have to be another brand. Take control of your life and be who you're meant to be. Build yourself a good life." She started to say something, but I silenced her. "Allison, I have nothing more to say to you. It's too late to say anything. From now on, your future is entirely in your own hands. Goodbye. Now get out of the car." I opened the door to let her out, got back in the car, and drove away. My new life was supposed to start soon, but that would have to wait